I'm Dave Emerson. I work for Yokogawa, and I'm the co-chair of the Enterprise Architecture Working Group. My other co-chair, Mark Bush, is in here this week. He works for our Shell up in Canada. And enterprise architecture in the OT world is really a new term, I think. At least it was for me. My co-chair, Mark, is trained as an enterprise architect, and he works in the OT area. Also on the working group, we have some other trained architects, and from the open group, they have a long history of supporting and promoting enterprise architecture along with methodology and tools for that. And I'll go through some of that today, but one of the questions that often comes up when we mention enterprise architecture in our community is, well, what's the enterprise? Why are we, as a standards group, doing this in the enterprise? And I asked that question to Mark, and his reply was, well, the way enterprise architecture works is enterprise just defines the scope of a given architecture. And for this group, the scope is not one company. The scope is really an ecosystem that we envision of suppliers, of end users, system integrators, working together to have an interoperable ecosystem of products and services. So we're not talking how one enterprise works, how one company works, or one business unit. We're talking about some future vision, how everything we're working on from the business and technology side will work together. From an architecture standpoint, that's something I think everyone in the OT world is familiar with. It talks about some formal description of systems, of components, and also it brings in the business requirements. One thing the open group has stressed upon us, and I think we've all worked towards that and understand it now, and Paul talked about that, is we shouldn't just rush off and do an architecture, do a technical solution, because we're all engineers and we can do a great technical solution. We probably do several good technical solutions, but we have to make sure they satisfy some business requirement. And this is a voice we need as a end user and supplier and system integrator together, is to state what those business requirements are we're trying to meet. So the enterprise architecture together will try to address and work with both the business working group and the technology working group to bring together the business requirements and the technical solution for those. One of the tools which we picked up from the open group, from the IT world really, is called TOGAF. And TOGAF stands for the Open Group Architecture Framework. And this is a tool and methodology which I'll give a very brief overview on that enterprise architects, primarily in the IT domain, use in order to work through business and technical requirements to drive down to technical solutions. Now, there's a chart you've seen before, and the red dot shows you where I'm talking about right now, where Mark Bush and I are leading the group, and we have a good group of people with us. What the key part in this is the dashed lines of the business and technical working groups. The enterprise working group is not necessarily the one that comes up with the architecture and all the solutions. We're the one that work and bridges the communication between the business and technology working groups to make sure there's a consistent set of terms, consistent set of problems being solved, and that the solutions match the business requirements. Our working group purpose, which we have in the charter, hopefully this week we'll finalize, is to document the clear picture of what the target open process automation architecture is. And we'll define and help build models and keep consistent versions of models and figures and terminology between the working groups. The tool we'll use for this, as I mentioned earlier, is TOGAF, and we'll work in conjunction with the two working groups as a technical contributor, business contributor, but also as a maybe mediator at times or conciliatory role. And we'll manage the repository of the models and terminology between the working groups. At least that's our Mark's and my image. We'll be meeting later with the working groups to figure out if they really think that's what we're doing too, but it is still in formation stage. This is a nice picture from the TOGAF group. One thing I've realized over the years is you can say is all you want, and you can put words down all you want, people remember pictures. And so this is the picture that we're working with. It's right out of the TOGAF Open Architecture Group. And it shows really a methodology or work plan for enterprise architecture. Now, the one thing that I was told early on by Mark and by the Open Group experts is not one size fits all. This gets tailored for every project, for every application. And Mark, my co-chair, made a proposal on how to tailor it for us. And I'm not going to go through, there's a lot of fine print in there, but this will get distributed. That's one reason I put so much in. But there's a key aspect, and if I can just get the laser printer on it, there's, I think, maybe the battery's getting weak after a long day here, and maybe the batteries went to Discovery Cove last night, I don't know. But what you see from the top coming down is preliminary into an architecture vision. We're somewhere in between those two right now, I would say. And if you look, you see that the blue and the darker blue circles is a C and D. A very key aspect of this is to separate the information system from the technical architecture. In our terms, that would be separating the application configuration from the operating systems and the network architecture and the servers that drive it. And that's something that's from the ExxonMobil contributed to us, but I think also with the business and technical working groups is recognized that we need to separate these two so the application or the information systems can be long-lived as the technology refresh of networks and servers and OSs can continue underneath it without impacting that. And that's where one of the key things Mark has focused us on in the Enterprise Architecture Group. I won't read through everything on this. Again, it's in here for information and to get the message out. But this is from the Enterprise Architecture, I believe, from TOGAF. David Lonsbury here will jump up if I say it wrong, maybe. But this is a sample of the business scenarios. And this is part of the enterprise architecture work, is to work with the business group in order to make sure that the business requirements and the use cases and business scenarios that the technology groups will use and the enterprise and the architecture group will use are clear and understood. And these are just three nice pictures, because again, pictures are great. People remember them. This is not necessarily what we're going to use. These are examples of models. When we talk about models, they're just figures. On the right-hand side, you actually see a business model canvas. This is something that's used in some companies and often startup ventures. Try to, in one page, put together the key aspects of a business model. And effectively, we have to create a business model for the open architecture world. On the left, you see an ISA 95 and an EC 61499 figures. These are potential standards that we'll use in the architecture in the technology solutions. And so when we talk about enterprise architecture models, this is one of the examples of what we're talking about and what we'd maintain and get agreement on in the groups. And here we have, again, the TOGAF model, customized what we're going to do. We may not do every step. We'll need to work with the working groups, business technology, to work that out and to come through with the agreement on what the steps will be. And I'm stuck here, as previous speakers have. And it's obvious. That was the last slide, I guess. I fooled myself on that. I thought a closing slide in here. But that's in summary what the Enterprise Architecture Group is going to do. It's a little new methodology, some new tool sets. I think as I've gone through it with the trained architects, it makes sense to me. It gives us some framework to work in. And it's new in the OT world, but I think it's a valuable and helpful framework that we can follow through. It's not necessarily going to give us a solution, but it's going to help us find it for ourselves. Thank you. And